Okay. How are you doing, sir?
Very good. Very good.
Great. Super. Um, we have, how many people we've got so far? 21 people here so far. And I expect some more people from the West Coast. They're all still working, so I expect some of them to come in. And so what I wanted to do is, first of all, try to get sort of your background, because a lot of people I invited there, a lot of these people may not know who you are, or they may know a little bit about you. And I think it's important that they know who you are as well as what you've experienced. So maybe can we go back and start with how you got down the rabbit hole? Like, I think it was 1975, you read a book.
Yeah, by Jack Sarfati,
Yeah.
well-known fringe physicist.
And what, yeah, and what was the book about? How did that?
Space, what was it? Space, Time, and Beyond, I think, was the name of it. It was actually a comic book, and I just happened to see it in a university bookstore where I was. Then I was doing something in another program at that point, and that got me started. That was about the anthropic principle, and that's what opened my eyes to that there was something going on that the physicists were unable to explain. And they're supposed to explain everything. Well, they weren't explaining this. So so that started me down the path, down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and you've got a couple of degrees. A lot of people have sort of asked me about this. You actually have 2 degrees, right?
Yes, both. Well, I have a bachelor's and 2 master's degrees in physics, and I went back again. I first left physics back in '66, just because it wasn't. I was just, well, I burned out. I burned out on 6 consecutive years of physics, and then I went back again after I read Jack Sarfati's book. I went back under Charles Misner at the University of Maryland, and he was the one who encouraged, not, I wouldn't say encouraged me, but he's the one who admitted me to my second attempt at a master's at a graduate program, presumably PhD program. But once again, this time, because they were not, I was trying to combine physics and philosophy, and I could not get any teacher, any professor to take on this project that I was having to do with the anthropic principle. So I went off on my own, and it was 5 years later. I had another awakening to the immaterialism. I realized that I was trying to explain the world in terms of a dualism. I went from being a materialist to being a dualist, and then in 1891, I flipped over to being an immaterialist, and that was my paradigm shift.
So in 1991, you dropped the dualism after you meet Ron?
No, 81.
Oh, 81. 81. Okay, 81. Okay.
But then I gave up, and in the mid 80s, I just gave up on this, on ever explaining. I mean, that's when I became an eschatologist. I realized that if the world is an illusion, that illusion could end at any time, and that turned me into a potential eschatologist. And when I met Ron, that's the first thing I said to him. Well, guess what? Have you ever heard of eschatology? He had not at that point, but he since has heard about it.
Okay. And tell us about your father and your sister, because they sort of stand out as sort of making you a little bit different than just your sort of average researcher.
Well, my dad was a professor of finance at the Harvard Business School, and then he joined the Eisenhower administration in the Treasury Department, and she was served there 7 years under Eisenhower. And my sister was the one. My father wasn't really political; he was an economist. But my sister Deborah, became involved in politics, particularly with the Bush family, and so that was. So she was doing politics with them for several years, and was involved in this is the George W. Bush. No, this is George H.W. Bush. Was the one she was involved with, and that would have been back in the 80s, I think. And so those were the two. My other sister was had a small ranch in Montana.
Okay, and your father
I'm
has.
not seeing any video. What happened to the video here? Grant, are we?
You're on my video.
Okay, you came back now.
I'm just looking at my questions. So if you want me to stay on here, that's fine. Okay. And you have a bizarre connection because you're not really into UFOs, but your father has this bizarre indirect connection with the big skeptic, UFO skeptic.
And we have traded promotion for tickets.
I'm being helped by Desta. Desta, can you mute that? Whatever happened there? Desta is sort of my princess. She helps me. She's a local girl who's helping me.
Page promotion, period. Please read below and let me know if you can provide a couple of tickets for this promotion, period.
I don't know. We're talking about tickets. Went off. Okay. Yeah, I don't know who I'm.
Yeah. Okay. Your father has a relationship or an indirect relationship with Donald Menzel.
True. They served together on the academic steering committee of the Harvard Board of Overseers during the war.
Yeah.
And of course, Donald Menzel knew about the Manhattan Project, and my dad knew about the D-Day plans, and they were kind of vying for each other who knew what about what, and they couldn't really tell each other what they knew, but they were back and forth, and finally Donald Menzel prevailed, and my dad, of course, when the bomb went off, my dad then realized that Donald had an inside track on the Manhattan Project.
Wow.
But he wasn't able to reveal it to the rest of the committee.
So you get
And
into
after,
sort of, yeah, go ahead.
well, after that, he was connected with the Rockefeller family. And he knew several Rockefellers personally.
Okay.
And of course, one of them, at least Lawrence, he knew as Larry. And of course, Lawrence was also involved in with my friend Ron at one point,
Yeah.
briefly.
So do you think that your family connections have anything to do with why you're connected like you are in this sort of world of the Aviary, and is that got anything to do with it, or is that just coincidence?
As far as I know, it's just a coincidence, but I think like other coincidences in this field, it may have some significance. But my father was all my family are very skeptical and of, anything I do with UFOs.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go. We were mentioning Ron, so I guess we should go there. How you got involved in UFOs and the sort of the famous 1991 encounter you have with Ron. So explain who Ron is and your encounter, how your ufology interest got you there.
Well, I had another set of experiences. I mean, my experiences were minimal and they did not involve entities in any way, but I had during the spring of 1991, I was involved with the Theosophical Society, and I had a sense of urgency that a series of coincidences, and during 5 days when I gave me the feeling that my eschatology, before it had just been an academic pursuit, I got the feeling that now it was becoming political. And through MUFON publication, on their cover of their magazine in the spring of '91, I saw the very first crop circle I'd seen, a very primitive one, but it because of the coincidence of it all, I became connected with the crop circle researchers in England, and through them, I asked them. I found out that MI5 or MI6 was studying the circles, and I asked them if they knew of somebody back in this country who was kind of looking over the shoulders, and they said yes, they had heard there was such a person, and you should talk to Bob Exler and a person at NASA Ames, which I did, and they both referred me to Ron Pandolfi.
Okay, so Ron is dealing with these other people, like he's and I think that's something we should point out. This is not just you that Ron has dealt with. He's dealt with a number of different researchers at various times.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, I think many more than are publicly known, because a lot of them, he deals with them privately.
Yeah.
It's a private interaction they had.
Okay, so tell people about the famous encounter you have with him with Los Alamos and that whole thing, how that starts.
Well, it was there was my second phone conversation with Ron back in the fall of '91. He mentioned that he was going to Los Alamos to talk to the aliens, and naturally I was skeptical, and I figured he was pulling my leg, so I put out a post, made a posting to the CompuServe UFO forum, and suggested they better not be pulling my leg, Ron at the CIA better not, better not be messing with me, because my big sister knew Nancy Ellis, who happened to be the president's sister. And I figured that was the last I'd hear of him from him. But 2 weeks later, though, my curiosity got up and I said, hey, Ron, how's it going? And he said, look, Dan, in the future, you can mention Ron and you can mention the CIA, but please don't put them together in the same paragraph, because my phone has been ringing off the hook these last 2 weeks. And he did mention that, he didn't mention who would call it. We can imagine other aviators, but he did mention Whitley Strieber had called him to find out what was going on at Los Alamos.
And you had actually phoned Los Alamos, correct?
I did. I think it was, shortly after that, I phoned Los Alamos and just like saying, seems like there's something really weird going on there. Could you connect me with the weird, we had the weird desk at the CIA, so maybe the weird desk at Los Alamos. They said, oh yeah, sure. You want to talk to John Alexander. So Ron was kind of impressed that I was able to break through these many layers of security just by calling the operator at Los Alamos. Anyway.
Were you aware of this story? Like, the story's always been around that Los Alamos had the live alien. Were you aware of that story at the time, or did that catch you off guard when you started talking about aliens at Los Alamos?
Well, the subject was dropped after that. I mean, no, I still thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
But he did say to me that shortly after I made the post, when I talked to him, he said, I've had to, because of your post to CompuServe, I've had to postpone my trip to Los Alamos. Now, I don't know whether, that didn't say it was to deal with aliens or anything like that. It got postponed.
And what's been your rule? Like all along, you report and you listen and you report, correct? Or something to that effect?
Listen and report. Yeah, I mean, I don't ask. I very seldom will Ron answer a direct question. So I pretty much just have to let him talk to me. And I report on our conversations. And I mean, several times, not too many times, he's asked me to remove posts. But there hadn't been prior censorship, but there is occasionally.
Yeah.
I might put out something personal that.
Yeah. But they know that you're basically, if they tell you something, you're undoubtedly going to put it out.
Ron has learned that to his chagrin. Yes, he has. Over 26 years, he's learned to be circumspect in his conversations with me.
But you have sort of, I've watched you for a number of years, and that's why I figured, a lot of people may not know the whole background of this thing, but I've watched you for a number of years and you've posted a lot of stuff. But there's also plausible deniability with your relationship with Ron. Can you explain how that works?
Oh, I'm crazy.
Well, they make you out to be crazy.
Obviously, I'm crazy. So that's deniability right there. I mean, so they say, well, why do you talk to him then if he's so crazy? Well, he said once in a while he has a useful idea, but that's very seldom. Very seldom. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't reproduce his posts or his, you don't tape them or anything. It's just basically, he will deny anything you've ever said. Correct? Over the years, he just basically no.
Well, I mean, he doesn't deny that much, but if you press him, like if somebody, a reporter called him up and said, "Oh, Dan reported that you said this or that," he would deny it. He would deny it. But just in general, I mean, he doesn't, unless somebody asks him, he'll kind of let it go and keeps talking to me, you notice. So that unless you know what's going on, you would say, oh, well, Dan's crazy. That end of story.
And you've basically talked to him, not every day, but most days for 26 years now.
There was a hiatus, a very significant hiatus for 4 years where I didn't talk to him at all, except for from between every day. I talked to him between 9/1 and 9/16 of 2001. And that was, I think, more than a coincidence.
Okay. And but you've had a lot of conversations, and you are his best man at his second wedding, godfather to his child, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So you're pretty good, close friends with him, and yet you were working
Well,
with.
I mean, we are foxhole buddies in a way. Over the years, we end up in the same foxhole, and you know, who else are you going to talk to?
Okay.
And of course, then the princess came on the scene. You understand that she's had to learn some of the lessons that Ron has learned. She had to learn them the hard way all over again.
Did you deal with his first wife at any extent?
Not as well. A fair, yeah. I mean, I would see her. Well, there was only one time when I met with her privately. Whereas with Aaliyah, I meet with her privately. We have lunch together, you know, every other week or so.
Yeah.
Except when she's not talking to me.
Okay, because his first wife, there's a famous thing that she told you about Ron's job being more important to the president. Can you relate that? That came from his first wife to you, right?
Well, I think, yeah, she told me that during the week when he was outed, involved with the Hughes Electronics collaboration with the Chinese missile testers, and that is one thing she mentioned at that point. And but mainly she went on to say that she had gotten a call from a senator who told her not to be concerned about what they're saying about Ron in the newspapers, that he's not really a whistleblower and he's not in trouble or in jeopardy at the agency. There's something else going on, and not to believe what she's reading in the papers. And then she told me he was going to be meeting with the Chinese delegation that Thursday.
Wow.
And I got in my car on the way home, my old analog cell phone, of course, everybody could listen to.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, guess what? I hear you're going to have a meeting, Ron, on Thursday. And he's pretty quickly hung up the phone. I didn't respond. He kind of hung up the phone. And I got back to Baltimore. He called me up and said, Dan, run, do not walk to the nearest cell phone store and get a digital cell phone. So
wow.
that's when I joined the digital age.
And so in 1991, you're working with Rosemary Guiley, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And what I wanted to establish is, like, a lot of people will think that Ron may be somebody who's like sort of a loose cannon. You have an experience in, I don't know who reports Ron, but there's an investigation done by the Inspector General at the CIA. And you sort of get can you go through that story and how it was sort of verified that this is part of Ron's job, this interaction with people in the UFO community?
Well, I mean, yeah, he's not supposed to be interacting with us because he's with this. Logically, it should be the FBI. It would be interacting with a citizen in this country. That would be FBI's job. So he had to get special permission from the FBI to interact with me. And that was, but then there was complaints were lodged against him, particularly by my friend Bill Aparo, and like, what's this all about? What's this interaction all about? And at the end of the investigation, some big old the inspector general, an ex-Marine or whatever, was sitting down with Ron, had a list of 12 questions. He went down the list of 12 questions, got the last question. He said, "Are aliens real?" And Ron said, "I'm sorry, you're not cleared for that information." And I mean, that's what Ron told me. I don't, apocryphal. I don't know.
So it's $100,000 investigation, and he's basically nothing happened. He's basically cleared.
Yeah, I don't think he was even slapped on the wrist. No.
Yeah,
No.
which tends to indicate that this is part of his, what do they call it? Collections, unconventional collections. Is that what they call it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think.
Okay. Yeah. Unconventional collections. Well, he was on the weird desk. I mean, that was, but yeah, I mean, they, I mean, that, what he told me about the weird desk is to monitor anomalous phenomena. And he told me at one point that there's no instrumented way to effectively monitor anomalous phenomena. So instead, they monitor the people who are associated with the phenomena. And so it's human intelligence. It's not signals intelligence, that how they get most of their information on this phenomenon. Now, I'm not particularly good. I mean, I'm not. I'm not. I've had less experience with anomalous phenomena than anyone I know in this field, and so that doesn't completely explain the interaction.
But you seem to be the messenger. I always call you the Messiah. That you are. Do you actually believe you have a role, like in terms of your life calling, that this is what you're supposed to be doing?
Well, back in that time period I mentioned, when I was at my second degree stint at the University of Maryland, that's when I had my Sophia experience.
Maybe tell people about that a little bit.
It was very little. I mean, it was something you wouldn't even write home about. It was seemed so minor. But I just heard a kind of female humming voice, humming sound in my while I was asleep. I think, it seemed I hadn't had that particular experience in dreaming, but I did at that point. And then when I woke up in the morning, I went and opened up the Bible for the first time, that had just been given to me by the Jehovah's Witnesses 2 weeks before. And I opened it up, and the second or third place I opened it to was John 16:12, and following, where they talk about the Spirit of Truth. And to me, it seemed like, well, this is like a help wanted ad. And I said, well, okay, I'll volunteer. I'll see what I can do about that. So that's, that was what, 40 years ago.
So what year was the Sophia experience?
What?
What year was the Sophia experience?
70. It was the winter of 76, 77, I believe.
Okay. And so you have, like, and so you see the phone call in 91, and then the other thing I wanted to sort of get you to talk about, that again shows that Ron may sort of have authorization to be doing what he's doing is you have the encounter with the former head of the Senate Intelligence Committee in '95. Can you tell me about those 3 meetings and Ron's connection and what I think it was Senator Straub told you?
No, well, okay, it was not the head, it was a ranking staff member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence.
But wasn't he former before '94?
No, he was the then acting chief of staff for on the Democrat side.
Okay.
This was just when Gingrich had come in. I was trying to talk to the Republicans. They wouldn't talk to me. So I tried Chris Straub, and he would talk to me. In fact, he said, I want to talk to you about this, but first I'll have to get a briefing before I can talk to you. I had 3 meetings with him. At his first 2 were in his rather secure office, staff office for the committee. And then the final meeting, Ron came and we just met in the Senate cafeteria. And all that Ron would all they would talk about was tigers, protecting tigers over in Russia. And I was kind of, getting bored. And from the at the end of the meeting, I said, well, I guess I really wanted to talk to you about some more about the eschatology. And he turned to me and said, well, Dan, I guess you'll just have to surprise us. So that was my end of my interaction with Chris Straub.
But didn't he say you were dealing with some very, what was the term he used for the people you were dealing with?
Oh, he used the term. He said, I can't tell you at the first meeting. He said, I can't talk to you about any individuals that you're interacting with who would be Ron, but he said, I can assure you, may rest assured that you're dealing with some very competent people.
Wow.
Period.
Yeah.
That's all I would say. And then we discussed he was a former Jesuit, and we discussed eschatology.
Wow. Okay. So, and Ron introduced you to some of the other Aviary. Can you explain what the concept of the Aviary, and then maybe when you start the aquarium, what happens there, like the relationship, because there's a bunch of people that you've been involved with, not as much as Ron, but indirectly. So maybe go through some of that for people.
I mean, it's surprisingly little. I've had surprisingly little contact with any bird name people besides Ron. The one I've had any more than just 1 or 2 meetings was with Kit Green, who was Ron's predecessor at the Weird Desk. And I have had, a couple dozen meetings with Kit Green over the years.
Okay, but you had a relationship with Richard Doty. What was that about in the early days?
I don't think it was Ron who put me on. It might have been Bill Aparo who suggested I call Rick. I had his phone number, and he told me about the red books and the yellow books.
Yeah.
And I particularly significant, he said, in order to read the yellow book, you had to have a critter, we call him critter, had to be holding the book so that you could read it. And the part I think mainly mentioned what he saw was a image of the crucifixion, and that was, of course, stuck in my mind. But that was all that's the only thing I remember that he mentioned specifically about the content of the Yellow Book.
But Ron doesn't have much good to say about Doty. There was some stuff with was that 2006? There was some emails leaked, and there's been a bunch of stuff that you were sort of dragged into.
I was dragged into. I mean, Ron has nothing good to say about any other aviary members.
Okay.
It's just, he'll say they're all liars, crooks, and worse. That's what he'll say. And I just figure that's how he protects them from, they protect him, he protects them by, such kind of misdirection. But he's had a lot of, with John Alexander, mainly with John and with Kit, he's had a lot of interaction with them over the years.
Okay. But when Doty's name comes up, didn't you have something to do with the sort of like this end of the world scenario, or where that idea came from Doty?
Well, that was the Hale Bopp incident, and that was also, what do they call it? The ranch.
Davidian? No.
Not branch.
Well,
it was the where
Kingdom.
they had the applesauce and the all that.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
And Doty was telling me. Well, Doty was telling me that he was preparing to meet the aliens. Just before then, he was preparing to meet the aliens in the Southwest, and Richard Colby. That's when Richard Colby had his unfortunate incident in a canoe on the Potomac River, and I never heard from Rick Doty after that incident.
Wow. Navy. Ron has talked about Navy. Can you maybe get into a little bit of that with who gets briefings, maybe stuff you've picked up there that he's talked about?
Oh, he said that every flag officer, every flag officer and above in the Navy has some level of briefing or information about this topic. That's really, that's about the extent of it.
Okay. And a lot over the years, you've been around as long as I have. Over the years, there's been a lot of discussion about MJ-12. Has Ron actually used the term? And what do you think about that?
Only very recently, within the last maybe year, as he mentioned MJ-12, and he contrasted that with the I think it was the aviary. That on the Pentagon side is MJ-12, and on the intelligence side, the intelligence people is really what the aviary is connected with, is the various branches of the intelligence, but that MJ-12 particularly is connected with the military. Now I don't know if I had there's military intelligence, so I don't know. There's some sort of overlap going on, and
that would be similar to when you talked about the possible briefing that was done with Trump, that there was, I think you called hardware and software people, like two sides. There's actually two sort of.
Well, not. I don't know in connection. Oh, there are two sides. We're Republican and Democrat.
No,
Where
but
the
I mean
two
in terms
sides-
of the same thing you're describing, where there's people who are interested in sort of the philosophical side or the what's going on, and the other people are just interested in the hardware. Is there a connection?
Oh, not between, that's not a distinction between the Aviary and MJ-12. No, that's, well, I don't know what that, there is that distinction. I don't recall that it attaches to either MJ-12 or the Aviary. That is, I'm sorry, I have made that distinction before, hardware and software. And of course, you know, I'm on this, I think of that mainly in reference to ufologists, that ufologists tend to segregate themselves into hardware types and software types. Like it would be human intelligence and signals intelligence, that kind of distinction.
So let's get into, I think what you and I sort of agree on is this idea about ET, you know, that Jacques Vallée said he'd be very surprised if it just turned out to be ET. And you talk about ultra-terrestrials. So can you sort of show the distinction between what you think this phenomena really is, or sort of spell out what you think this phenomena may actually be?
Well, I'm according to my, you know, all the philosophy and stuff I've done, that we're not, and the physics, according, you know, well, the physics that we're not being visited by astronauts, by alien astronauts. 1 second here, I'm just turning this. We're being visited by what I call ultra terrestrials, that would be dimensional beings. They're not coming from planet X. The ultra terrestrials are coming from dimension X, and now that of course makes more sense when we talk about portals and all that.
Yeah,
that business.
And you've never, I think this is something you and I discussed privately. Ron has never gotten into who they are or that sort of thing. And that's where it gets to, you know, like, for example, Stephen Greer saying that the aliens are good and Tom DeLonge saying the aliens are bad. I think what I heard from you was that they really don't tell you that kind of stuff. That's not really something they discuss with you, is the sort of the religious aspects or the philosophical aspects of what was going on. That's never been discussed with you, like in terms of talking to Ron. That's never been a topic he brings up.
I just comment from Andrew, as Andrew I think was taking exception to my characterization of physics, but anyway, Ron refers to these, originally referred to these aliens as visitors, and that's how, when he finally came around, it was I think it was several years. He wouldn't admit to anything. When we finally though, he admitted that there were, well, he didn't admit anything, but he just said, well, we refer to them as visitors. So you kind of figure, well, maybe there's some interaction going on there. And so, but more recently, since the discussion has turned to portals and all that, of course, we're now, I mean, you know, he's relating to me, I mean, a little bit about his own portal experience, very little bit. It's very minor, and I've asked him some, you know, follow-on questions, and he's not, has not been open to, you know, delving further into that topic. I mean, when he's on the other side, he's appearing as a frog.
Okay.
And Aaliyah is appearing as a beast, and Kashmir is appearing as a cheetah. Now, when I use the word appearing, but he just says that's what they are. It's not whether it's an appearance or what it is, but it's not what I've asked him specifically. Well, what about your human bodies? What happens to those when you're on the other side? And he said, I can't tell you that. Not going to tell you that.
Yeah. So the portal is, I think, a key idea, because until you started talking about portals, I really never took it very seriously. But the portal would sort of be an indication that this is sort of interdimensional rather than big starships, getting up to the speed of light and moving from planet to planet, like with the star fleets. It's more like a quantum physics thing where you're moving from one point to another point, correct?
Well, it'd be like teleportation is maybe what you're suggesting. It's not, there's no rocket ships involved, and it's more even space-time. This is mostly, it's beyond space and time where you're going. And
But does that tie into the quantum physics stuff that you?
I haven't. I use my physics mostly for developing metaphors and analogies. I don't see any direct application of it. I know that Jack Sarfati thinks that quantum mechanics is at the basis of the whole phenomenon. I have to disagree respectfully that it's a mental phenomenon. It's a dream phenomenon. In our dream, we can dream about physics, but that doesn't. On the other side, for instance, you don't take any physical stuff, particularly any kind of technological equipment. You don't take. You don't take those with you. Whatever it is, it's an out-of-body experience. I mean, you have an out-of-body experience. You don't bring along your GoPro camera when you have your out-of-body experience.
And so from what you've learned in your position, from what you've heard, do they have the portal technology? Because there's the rumor that Joe Firmage is either being helped to build a portal, or he's got a portal, or you hear these sort of stories. What do you think the state of the technology is? I mean, is that why Ron is talking about this now? Do they have the portal technology?
I'm skeptical. I think that may be disinformation, because everything I'm hearing points away from the technology, except with the exception of the actuators, one of which I held in my hand back on a.
Okay, well, tell that story. That's on the island. Tell the story about that.
Well, I was looking. Yeah, I kind of.
Yeah, people want to understand that.
Kind of, look around. That's what I do. I look around. I saw, all this electronic drone equipment around. But I saw one object with which I had not seen before, not familiar, and it just looked as a little cube, and with like a big knob on it. The knob was about as big as the cube, or what I thought was a knob. So I picked it up, and Ron, out of the corner of his eye, said, "You better put that down." And I put it down, and he said, "No uncertain terms, put that down." And okay, so and after that trip, he said, "Oh, by the way, that thing you picked up from that table, that was an actuator, and that was being taken to New York by actually, there are two of them. I don't know if they're identical or they came in a pair, but the pair of them were being taken separately to New York by two individuals who were being trained, unbeknownst to me, were being trained how to use the actuators by Ron at that meeting." Um,
And what's the speculation? Where were they going?
Trump Tower.
Trump Tower. So let's get into the goodie bag. I mean, is this part of the goodie bag? You just explain what the goodie bag is, and
Yeah, I mean, it might have been. But the goodie bag was similar to the Corso story about the file cabinet that had the Roswell residue
yeah.
material. And again, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of equipment it is, if it's electronic, how it comes through, how do you get it through the portal? I don't know. Ron never said it came through the portal, but it came from somewhere, not, not here. So, I mean, there are those two things. There are the actuators and there's the goodie bag. And how those, but all the portal experience I've been told about, actuators only been mentioned in that one context.
And explain what the goodie bag is. What it's got to do with Donald Trump,
Ron
right?
said he turned this over to the White House shortly after the inauguration, and that was given to Donald so that he could then pass it out to his friends in industry. And it was sort of like a favor. It was, like a party favor, kind of bag. And that was the party favors. Now, I'm not, that's one of the, infinite number of things that I don't bother to follow up on.
Yeah. And Ron's relationship to the White House, go through that. When does he first arrive at the White House? And what's his possible relationship to the White House?
Well, it was 1983. Shortly out of graduate school, he was a newly, physical chemist or chemical physicist, whatever, out of UCLA, had a PhD, and he was assigned to the White House and to the Weird Desk, and that's where he met Mr. Malik, who was Aaliyah's father, or adopted father, adoptive father, I should say. And Aaliyah at that time was 5 years old in 1983. And he kept track of her. Well, Mr. Malik, who was serving as the chief financial officer for the Pakistani embassy, was actually a Kashmiri citizen. The story, as Ron described it, was, well, he had these two items with him: his adopted daughter, Aaliyah, and the pod that she came down in. And they were, and one he gave to the president, the pod he gave to the president, and to Ron, he assigned him to be her protector. And I don't know much in between, except at one point, not too long ago, she was on her own out somewhere, some kind of dangerous area, and the hotel she was, I think, was going to stay at was blown up. Going to, like the night before or the night after that she had, well, it wasn't blown up the night before, but she had been planning to stay there, I believe. The day, the day it blew up, was blown up.
Okay, so now relate how the pod fits into portals. So what's your understanding of, is it the same thing, or is this where the portal story comes from? Because you're only told this recently, right?
Yeah, this is all since this last December, I believe, shortly before we took the Panama Canal trip. And he mentioned the three of us were at the kitchen table, and he said, he said, he mentioned a pod, and he said, that's the first I heard of this portal was as a pod. And he said, like out of the blue, and the pod came over with the princess back in, that would have been back in '83. It just, and then, her mouth dropped open, my mouth dropped open, and Ron sort of looked embarrassed. And he later claimed that he wasn't really intending to give out that piece of information at that time. So I asked her afterwards, and she said, well, she'd surmised that there was something like that going on, but that was the first she had heard about it from Ron. That was just January.
And so she's supposedly from the other side, correct?
Yeah, that she resides on both sides, and she's done this before. She does sort of, she reincarnates through the pod, I guess you could say, what she does. But she does remember about the other side, but it's connected with the same family, connected with her family in Kashmir that was eliminated when she was 2 years old. They were assassinated. A little family feud going on back there in the mountains.
Has she ever talked about being on the other side of the portal, or the going through? I know Kashmir made some
that's really what I told you was about it. Just that Ron's the frog, and Princess is the beast, and Kashmir is the cheetah. And I've heard that from all three of them. They seem to, they don't confirm the story, but they're all telling the same story.
Yeah.
That's what I can say, even independently.
And Kashmir's description, she calls it the wishing well. Can you get into that?
I'm the one who came up with that term.
Okay.
That was Aaliyah remembered seeing an indoor well at her aunt's house in Islamabad when she was 2 years old, and it sort of stuck in her memory. And when she went back a few years later, it was not, it had been modified, or it had been substituted. And she knew it wasn't the same thing that she had seen originally. So, there's the pod, which I think of, I don't know what the pod would be. And then there's the wishing well, and then there are portals, and they're all somehow all connected. I haven't been told the specifics of that.
What about the idea of manifesting? Was there the description about you can manifest once you get through the other side?
I'm turning the fan back on here. You can manifest. You manifest as a critter. At least they do. That's but they realize, I don't know how much physicality is involved in any of this. I don't know but I mean, one thing I was told was that the Donald Trump selection that was somehow connected with the 32 vectors, and that those were being manipulated on the other side.
So, okay, so get into the fact that this idea about picking Trump, the idea that you heard that Hillary was going to lose. Can you get into that?
Let's see. I think it goes back to January of 15 when I first 2015 that I first heard mentioned the 32 vectors, and but then I forgot. I didn't have any place to put it in my mind. I forgot about it, and then he mentioned it again in March, and I said, I was talking on the phone afterwards to Aaliyah, and she said, "Well, don't you remember? He said this same thing in January." And I said, "Okay." I sort of, I vaguely recall something, and but then in June of 15 is when he first said that Hillary was going to resign from the campaign, and he pretty consistently said that throughout. And after the fact, after the election, he said it really wasn't that Hillary was going to resign, but that what we were looking for is Trump was going to win. And we didn't know how. We figured, I guess we figured that Hillary resigning would be an obvious way for him to win the nomination or election.
Okay, can you talk about another thing that happened, or let's go to the last couple of years? Do you think something has changed in the last couple of years? Do you see sort of a quickening, or because to me something has changed in the last couple of years where it seemed very quiet, and all of a sudden all this stuff happens at the same time. There's all these people out there. Is there some accelerated plan to do something here?
I mean, I observe some of the same things that you do. I imagine you're closer to the UFO scene than I am, but certainly I know you are, but certainly on the Pandolfi side of things, there does seem to be a pace seems to be picked up in the last, since those 32 vectors were mentioned back in January 15. There's definitely been a acceleration.
Does that fit into your worldview? Is there something in terms of the way the world is that, have they discovered something? Do they know something? What do you, like, how do you interpret what's going on?
I'd be the last one to be told if there was something like that going on. I'd be the last one to know.
But I'm thinking from your own perspective, from what you think is, you must have thought about why is this happening now? Because you have Tom DeLonge coming forward with his 10 people, and then you have Stephen Greer has his new project, and then you hear all these stories about Spielberg.
Well, I mean, I think there have been a lot of cycles in this field, up and down cycles, and I don't put too much stock in them, but I'm seeing, what I see though is beyond the cycles, that really going to my, really to my 1991 experience, there was a sense of urgency, and I followed that for a long time, and nothing really urgent seemed to be happening, except we were killing each other. We were very good at killing each other, and that, I think, in 91, well, it's about that time I became more aware of the energy crisis, and that we were either going to, the physicists were going to come up with a free energy device, or something something else was going to happen, either some physical breakthrough or there'd be a metaphysical breakthrough in order just for humanity to survive. And I put my money on the metaphysical side, as I've been, since 1977. I had my money on the metaphysics, and that seems to, particularly with the energy crisis, that's the most crucial one, that we just can't, how many years could we live without, we cannot survive on alternative energy. It would be very, that would totally change the human situation when we run out of fossil fuel. That's what I see. It's really the energy crisis, and the rest of it is I think related to that. There is increasing human competition for increasingly limited resources, and this is pushing us into increasing conflicts around the world, and people are running out of essential resources. Now, maybe there's going to be a breakthrough in physics, but that's what I was looking for in physics, and I didn't find it. And so I've gone over to the other side.
Okay, in terms of the other side, do you think it's a phenomenology? Do you think it's all tied together, like remote viewing, ghosts, psychic phenomena, UFOs? Do you think that's all something
I think it really can be tied into the, I think the portal phenomenon is basic to all of our paranormal experiences that we have. Either we're a personal individual portals, as I think we are, but also together interpersonal portals are more of an interpersonal area phenomenon, and that's why I think they're so important in this going forward. They're going to be very important.
But why would they bring it up now? Why throw out this portal idea? There must any.
I did not do this spontaneously. I was resisting the whole. I don't know. I kick myself now. Is why was I so dense, so obtuse? But finally, we gone through about the desert rendezvous and the and to me there was going to be a desert. There was going to be a UFO landing in the desert, and that's what we were talking about. But then he finally had to say, Dan. And even though I'd seen for years, he and Ronnie Jr. were big fans of Stargate, the Stargate series. But I don't know. I was sort of, my paranormal thinking was either to UFOs or to parapsychology, and I wasn't thinking about the obvious thing, which he finally had to hit me over the head with the portal idea. That was just June of last year.
So you had the chance. Can you describe that? You had the chance to go, and you're the one that called off going to the portal, correct?
For the alleged
the rendezvous in the desert.
The rendezvous in the desert, which turned out to be a portal idea, and I said, why do we have to do this? why do we have to do this now? Why suddenly, all of a sudden, this came up in August? In August, he started talking about this September date, and I said, oh, wait a minute, what's this about, and who's in charge of this, and who's pushing this? And he finally said, well, I guess you're in charge, Dan. I said, well, I'm not. I'm going to drag my feet because I don't know what's going on. I just learned about the portal idea in June, and I don't know what we're getting into here. And I think afterwards I surmised that at that point he thought Trump was going to lose, and so he was going to push this up and do it on the Barack Obama's term. And so inadvertently I was sort of helping out the Donald side of that equation.
Okay, and so you don't go. You're the only one that hasn't been to a portal, right? I mean, I've sort of dealt with a lot of people, and yeah, it seems like you're the only guy that didn't get to go.
I know. I'm the only guy. I mean, yeah, I know. But I'm not. I'm not that anxious. I'd like to. I say, well, look, Ron. Ron and Aaliyah, why don't you just explain to me what's going on? I'll believe. I'll believe you. I'll report on it. But no, it doesn't. No, it's somehow that's not the way it's supposed to be.
And even the Pope got to go. Can you tell the story about the Pope and the portal?
Yeah. That I was invited to go on a cruise with the Pandolfis. I don't know if it was what year it was. It was either 2014 or 2015. I think 2014. And in the Aegean, mostly in the Aegean Sea. And I was told it had something to do, the Pope was interested in the phenomenon of UFOs being seen over Kashmir. Both Indian and Chinese troops on the internal border were seeing UFOs, and the Pope wanted to hear about that. And that was going to be part of, at the end of their trip, they were going to go to Rome. Well, I didn't, I did not, it wasn't clear to me. It wasn't, I forget, what exactly was said at what time, but I had in mind that they were going to somehow stop by the Vatican. That was it. Well, it was only recently, only in the last couple of years, that Ron and Aaliyah have said that the reason they went to the Vatican was to grant Pope Benedict his wish of going through the portal, and to do that he would have to resign, which he did about 3 weeks after he met Aaliyah at the Vatican. And
Aaliyah got a ring, right? Did you see the ring?
I don't know anything about a ring. No, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Maybe I've got that wrong.
Okay.
So somebody's just brought up misinformation. So I guess we should deal with this right now. The idea that Ron might be giving you misinformation, which didn't make any sense to me or to you, that you've had, 6 people follow you on Open Minds Forum for quite a while. It doesn't seem to make any sense that, to me, if they wanted to sort of throw everybody off or cover it up, they would just shut up and not talk about it. It doesn't make any sense that they would be giving information to you who you really don't have any.
If you want a disinformation campaign, you'd use somebody like Tom DeLonge.
Exactly.
Or maybe Steve Greer.
Exactly.
And what am I, what am I doing? Who am I talking to?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you on, is because most people don't really know your story, that you've been telling your story now for, how long have you been blogging, 20 years?
Well, yeah, I mean, I started out as soon as the internet. I was on the bestpossibleworld.com. Before I was on CompuServe, I was on CompuServe originally, then the Best Possible World, that started that was about 2000.
Yeah.
And then in 2006, I migrated to the first version of Open Minds Forum. And then in 2012, or that collapsed, the first version collapsed, and then Sorellis Griebenbach resurrected what is the present second version of Open Minds Forum, where I've been since 2012.
Okay. So to you, what do you think? It's just, did you happen to know this guy? What do you think's going on? Or that, why do you think he's telling you?
I'm sorry.
Why do you think you're being told what you're being told?
Oh, why am I
Yeah.
being told? Well, I think it's a conspiracy, is what I think.
A conspiracy?
I think Ron and I are co-conspirators in whatever
Okay,
we
explain
do.
that. Explain that.
Well, now joined by Aaliyah and Kashmir. We got a, menage quatre, four. There are four of us who are, if you're going to put the story out, how do you put it out? And this has kind of come down to this point as well. Is it going to be Donald Trump or Dan Smith? And I thought it was going to be, Ron maybe thought it was going to be Donald Trump, but Donald now doesn't. He said, well, hey, you guys have a blast. I've got some lawyers to talk to here, and I've got other things to worry about. So that's what if any of this is true, then that's what this is. We're the designated, we're designated to be the messengers for this process. And this relates to the princess's pod. She described to me when we were still talking about 2 weeks ago that there are portals all around the world, and it's kind of a network. It's almost like a honeycomb or beehive or something. But she said that her portal is like the hub portal. And the assumption is that this is for the purposes of disclosure, that this is why the other portals are not, for instance, the Mount Shasta portal that
Katerina is talking about?
Katerina is talking about, that's a one-way, they can only go halfway into it. They can't, portals, I understand, have, an entrance and an exit to the other side. You enter from this side and you exit to the other side. Well, those two, the entrance and the exit, are controlled separately. We control this side, they control the other side. And so you have to have them to fully function. It has to be as a passage, that you have to have cooperation of both sides. And so this is the only one that's now open through, and that's, I think, what Kevin is training to be the first civilian. Happens to be Hollywood connected. He would go through. He would be the first one through to describe what's going on. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. We brought up Donald Trump's name a few times, and because I do the presidents, a lot of people always tell me the president doesn't know what's going on. President doesn't get briefed. Can you talk about what you know about Donald Trump? Does he know? Was he briefed? You're talking about him sort of pulling out now. Can you maybe go through sort of your impression of what you think has happened based upon what you've been told?
Well, I mean, I only have one source.
Yeah.
Only one source on any of this, and that's Ron. And he told me that at one point he was talking to Donald about every day for a period of time. I don't know, years, months. And but as I say, Donald has, I guess, now focusing on other items, and so with the princess, yeah, has a special portal, and I mean, it's sort of, you put together the princess's portal and Smith's, you know, cosmology, the small world cosmology, and that's, these two items are supposed to, a kind of, horse and carriage kind of thing. And of course, Ron has been responsible for getting us together.
Do you think Trump is interested in the thing, or is he just busy with other things? You think he would want to monetize the technology?
Yeah, I think that was the only thing I heard, that maybe he wanted to see about building casinos on the other side. That's our president for you. I mean, Donald is doing, I think he's doing just what he's supposed to be doing. It just that, it is a little bit, can be embarrassing at times.
You had some meetings, a couple of meetings in the last couple of months with Ron's wife, the princess, and you got into discussion about trip to Kashmir, to the portal. Is that still on?
Wait, I hear you say a couple meetings.
Yeah, you had a couple of meetings with.
Right. Princess and I would meet a couple times every week, at least.
No, I'm saying on the internet. You had your internet sessions where.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh,
and at that point,
go-to meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, your go-to meetings, and you were talking about the trip to Kashmir and taking, who wanted to volunteer. Can you go through that? Is that still on?
I don't know, because Princess and I have sort of discontinued talking the last 2 or 3 weeks, but the last I heard, it was being discussed, and also there's another country in this hemisphere that would be more come more immediately, and I don't know whether or not the hint. Of course, there are always these hints that it has something to do with the portal, and that's the that's so. I mean, that's just a hint. That's just a hint I have.
And they were going to take volunteers. Is that true?
And, well, not to this first one, but as far as the last I heard, yeah, there were going to be like 7 volunteers would come as far as Kashmir, but just one of them would be selected to actually join our little party and the portal excursion. Yeah.
And there was discussion about 7 days training. I asked you that. I didn't really hear from you. What's the 7 days training? What's that all about?
Well, it would just be like, I know, you could ask Kevin about his training. It was just splitting rocks in a quarry. I hope there's more. I think there'd be, apparently there's that. I don't know why there's that physicality to it. I don't know. I think it's more a mental. They use the physical to train the mental, is I think what it's about. But yeah, there would be. That's So I don't know. I haven't heard anything more about it than there would be this 7 people being trained for about 7 days.
Wow.
And yeah.
Okay, one last question, then I want to get, the last thing is, I want to talk about disclosure, but Ron's son, have you had interactions with Ron's son? He's got his PhD now, correct?
He does also in physical chemistry, I believe. I have only, I've only seen him once or twice since, since he moved to the West Coast with his mother. But yeah, he's as a PhD and also in physical chemistry, I believe.
Is he interested in the phenomena? Did you talk to him about the phenomena?
At one time, I did attempt to explain the best possible world to him, and his father left the room rather abruptly. He came back after I left. I guess came back. He was and Ronnie said, I did not understand what Dan was trying to tell me.
Okay. Now, that's the last thing I want to talk about is disclosure. Can you sort of, that's your thing, maybe tell people your understanding of disclosure, what you think might be happening, what should happen?
Well, I just keep doing what we're doing, and we just, it would, word of mouth. I think word of mouth is probably the most effective way, and the flow of information from the inside to the outside would continue to accelerate as it has over the past 2 years. If we can keep that trend going, I think that would be sufficient, and so there's no real disclose. I mean, this is disclosure without disclosure. We're just keep doing more of the same, what we've been doing. I mean, it's acclimation is what it is. There is sort of idea of a point of no return. There is a point at which you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube, and I think we kind of already beyond that point of no return anyway. So in other words, Ron and me and the princess, we could go off to Shangri-La, and the process would continue. The disclosure process would continue in our absence.
Is there more than one team? I think I discussed you before. I'd heard someone else say 6 teams, and I think I asked you, and you thought there might be more than one. Do you think there's more than just Ron, or is there, like we talked about Jim Semivan, we talked about whoever's running Tom DeLonge's operation, that there may be other operations similar to what's happening?
I mean, from the on inside team,
Yeah.
inside teams.
Yeah.
Well, there's the Aviary, there's MJ-12, but specifically for disclosure, I've not been told about any such. It's not like I don't have the feeling that we're under competition. From the inside, it's from you guys on the outside who are our competition at this point.
So you don't see the president standing up and disclosing. You believe in the disclosure coming from the outside, that the people sort of talk about it, raise consciousness.
Sorry, you're breaking. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No,
sorry. You broke up. You were breaking up there.
Okay, I'm just saying you don't see the president disclosing.
No, not at this point. He signed off. He's signed off. He said, "You guys have a blast, have fun. Yeah, I've got this other stuff to worry about."
Would you try to block it if you heard that was coming down the pike? Is that the right way, or is the way that it's happening right now the right way to do it?
I think this is this is fine. It's okay with me. it seems to be okay with Donald, and there's never been any real alternative
Oh, shoot.
to what we've been doing, except just my biggest competition might be coming from my friend Eric Garza. I mentioned on the blog I quote him on the blog, and he's doing this on his own. He has his own kind of private portal, and he has some pretty wild experiences. And but I think that but I say he's in competition, but there's really not competition. I mean, it's not, he doesn't, I mean, there's a lot of stuff is happening around the world with regard to people opening up about experiences, and there being more experiences and all this. And so there's it's like the general said, please tell me where my troops are going so that I can get out in front of them. We're kind of playing catch up here is what we're doing. And Ron is only going to give me a few inches of slack. And but just enough to sort of keep my head above water is all he's doing from my perspective.
And maybe final question.
I mean, I think it's all, yeah.
Maybe it's final.
I say, if we disappeared, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
no. I'm just thinking as a sort of like a final question, and then we'll take some questions if people have questions. How does it fit into your worldview in terms of, say, your religious worldview? If you were to tell someone the importance of the UFO subject, how does this fit into how people live their lives? Is this just an oddity of the world, or is this something very important that philosophically people can learn something from what UFOs is all about, the real story?
Yeah, I mean, that's what this is all about, is it's that we find out who we are and where we're coming from and where we're going. I mean, that's what this is about. And we came from the other side, and we're going back to the other side. And on the other side is what I've referred to as the monad, which is the source. I mean, it's the source. That's where we came from, and that's where we're going back to. And we have as much time. I mean, in the small world hypothesis, there's deep space and deep time, which are an appearance, mainly just an appearance, just the backdrop or background. What's significant to us is the lived time, lived space, and that's a few thousand years that the human drama has played out. And now we come to the end. I think our mission is pretty much accomplished. And now we're just, with disclosure, with the millennium, we're just going to kind of wind down our mission. We're going to complete our mission here. We're going to, turn off the lights on this side. We don't, we go back to where we came from, and this is this is the best possible world. If somebody has a better idea, I mean, people will say, "Oh, we want to have an infinite universe, an infinite time. We want to be on this side." Well, that's not really. I don't think. I don't want. If I'm going to spend eternity, it's going to be on the other side. It's not going to be on this side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're happy with how it's gone? With your role in this whole thing over your many, many decades?
Am I happy with it? I mean,
Sometimes you seem frustrated on your blog. You seem, you know,
do I look happy? Oh yeah, I'm happy. Yeah. Oh yeah. I
because
mean,
sometimes you seem frustrated
it's
on your blog, Dan, where you get frustrated
sorry.
where it's not really going well, and you know, it's like, you
Oh,
know,
do I have my bad days? Oh yes, yes, I have my bad days. I do. I'll admit, I've had bad days, and I guess my mother told me that there would be bad days, but I can't think of a bad. I mean, it's not that I'm just like an ordinary guy, and I think if you wanted to do this, you would do it with but an ordinary person. We realize that anybody could do what I'm doing if you just have some modicum of information and modicum of support and so forth, and anybody could be doing this. It's just, somebody has to, it's a dirty job. Somebody's got to do it. That's all.
well,
And I have done with Ron and I. Yeah, we amuse each other. We do laugh quite a bit. We do.
yeah, but I've seen you sort of as a sort of a lucky guy compared to most people are scrambling around trying to figure what's going on, and here you are sort of like you have the best source of anybody. I mean, a lot of people say they've got, you know, an Aviary, bunch of these people, those people, this guy's telling them stuff, but you, to me, you have the ultimate source.
Well, I have two sources. I have Ron,
Yeah,
which now includes the princess and Kashmir,
yeah.
and I have this source here, logic. That's what I. So yeah, I mean, we all have the necessary smarts to. We'll be kicking ourselves when, say, oh, why didn't I think of that before Chicken Little? Why didn't I think of that first? And well, I mean, that's where, Ron, I mean, Ron kind of held my hand at crucial points. And so, here I am. I mean, it's, I mean, I'm not sure you'd wish this upon a dog. If I don't have a dog, but if I had a dog, I think I wouldn't say, oh, go out there and be Chicken Little. I don't think I think the dog would say, thanks, but no thanks.
Well, but then you got to look
So,
at Gandhi and Mother Teresa. I mean, they didn't have exactly, you know, easy lives. I mean, sometimes I guess if you've got the high road story, you're going to suffer a little bit where you have to, you know, because usually, you know, it's almost like the very famous people die young. They, you know, they everybody thinks it's an easy road, but maybe that's what it's about is you.
it's been a frustrating. I mean, it's been a long period, a lot of frustration over 40 years when I started this particular path. So, I mean, there have been frustrations and there have been, but I've never really, I mean, when I had that Sophia experience back in 77, since then, I've really never been able to look back. I really can't remember what it was like before I met Sophia in my dreams.
Yeah.
It's hard to,
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to imagine. I can't really go back there.
Okay, are you willing to take some questions from people that want to
Sure.
ask you questions?
Oh yeah, sure. I could do this. Grant, I could do this all night, but I think maybe you have to get some sleep or something.
Well, no, the last time we did one of these was 5 hours long, so but we're not going to go that long. We're only.
Oh dear. Oh no. I want to do 5 hours.
But I wanted to maybe get you because I've got this mailing list. So you've got I think there's 34 people on here. So maybe tell us if there's going to be another meeting. I will let these people know who are on this mailing list. So you but sort of advertise the get-togethers you have on the go-to meetings with the princess.
Yeah, we had 2. We've had 3 meetings with the princess. The first two meetings were okay, but then something did not go well at the last meeting. That was before we had our breakup.
Yeah.
And that was kind of contributed. I mean, a princess slept through the first half of the go-to meeting. Last one, which I was a little bit, I found that difficult. So,
But you will take questions.
So, but yeah, I hope we can get it.
Yeah. So, but your meeting,
have another print will. I mean, I don't know when the next one is not scheduled. I would certainly, be posting it on the blog, and I'd be emailing you and posting it on the blog.
And we'll send it to these people.
If you would like to.
The only thing is better on your meetings than this one is you have the princess there, and you take all the questions, and so they can actually get to talk to you and the princess. So I will advertise it.
Really, I mean, Ron and the princess are around when I'm doing this, but they pretty much don't want to be. Neither of them wants to be on camera or say much. I mean, princess was asking me questions. She sort of started questioning, but they don't. Yeah, they mostly left that up to me. The princess was not as active as you've been in this process.
Okay. Here's a couple of questions here. The war rumors. Do you believe that there's some sort of war imminent, or has that got anything to do with this?
Oh, the North Korea thing. Well, Ron called this morning, and I asked him right off about what he thinks about the North Korea business, and he said, don't worry about North Korea. That's not the problem. He said, if you want to worry more about China, which might be more of a long-term issue. But he says they don't have, North Korea is not putting bombs on missiles at this point. They may have the bombs, they may have the missiles, but they're not. And I mentioned, oh dear, I mentioned on the blog today that Ron on one of our trips, one of the other trips that I did not go on, cruises, he left from the cruise and went directly to North Korea to witness. This is right at time of a previous nuclear test, and so I mean, it's like he was invited there, special guest, to participate in the testing. So I think he's got some kind of connections there that are helpful.
Okay.
In this regard.
Okay, there's a question here. Somebody must have come in late. Dan keeps referring to Ron. Can you tell us Ron's full name, position, job? So maybe just, I don't think we really know it's all sources and methods as to what his job is. But again, explain who Ron is, and it sort of gives the importance of who you are. I mean, who is Ron?
Well, he's, I met him in his capacity working for the agency. And he's still working there, as far as I know, but I don't I can't verify that, where he's working. He might be working at local 7-Eleven, and this is all just a joke. But I don't think so. I don't think that's true.
Okay. So somebody asks, are spiritual beings experiencing the physical reality on this side? So I guess the question of bodies and physical crafts that may have been recovered. Are they able to manifest in the physical world, whoever the intelligence is behind the phenomena?
Well, I believe in angels, and I think angels can either be, in fact, I think I had an angel experience in front of the White House 3 weeks ago. But they can either be corporeal, or they can be incorporeal. And they can shapeshift, beings can and shapeshift. I mean, look at the Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, there's a lot of physical stuff going on around that. I mean, I think Ron would express skepticism about some of that reporting, but no, I believe in angels and demons. I one time, one of my interlocutors pointed out that demons are not supposed to be physical. Only angels can be physical. Demons cannot be. Well, I don't know. That's an interesting thought, but yeah, I do believe angels can be perfectly physical when they want, as was the angel that brushed against my back, seemingly in front of the White House.
Somebody wants you to explain your theory about personal portals.
Well, that we're all that's really what I mean, if you have a dualistic Cartesian view of mind and body, that there's this aperture between our body and our mind that is our own individual portal, and I refer to it sometimes as a quantum aperture. Following, there are quantum mind people. I use that as a metaphor for, but yeah, we have with our well, I mean, that gets quite complicated quite quickly, and I don't know. I don't have many answers there, but I do follow the mind-brain problem, and that's
Okay. A question that just occurred to me. We had a meeting here in Winnipeg, sort of an experiences meeting, quite a few people there. And one of the issues that came up, now it's escaped my mind here. Let me go to the next question. I'll remember what the question was.
yeah.
One of the questions was, has the president signed off on what's going on here? You're talking about these sort of initiatives and stuff. Has the president signed off and said, go ahead with this?
That's what I've been told. That's what I've been told. I only have one source has told me that. That's
Okay.
all I know.
And speaking, here's an interesting one. From the Pelican to everybody, is Dan going to Costa Rica?
From the Pelican, am I going to Costa Rica? Well, I don't know. I mean, that was the last I heard. I might be doing that. Sure. I mean, if I'm invited, if I get an engraved invitation and my own little actuator, if I can carry my own little actuator down to Costa Rica, I'd be glad to go. Pelican, yes.
You travel quite a bit with the Pendolfis, right? You had been on quite a few trips with them.
Well, it's really just the three cruises. Yeah, three cruises to Alaska. One first one was Bahamas. The second one was to Alaska, and the third one was to the Panama Canal. And I've been to the island we've referred to. That was, and to Melbourne. One trip, Melbourne, Florida, and to the island off the southeast coast. So yeah, there've been several trips.
Okay, somebody's asking about the princesses work in conservations and UAVs. Is there something more to this than just an interest in that? Can you talk about her work? Maybe people don't know her interest in that field.
Yeah, well, you can look it up on the internet. The Kashmir World Foundation, KWF, and she just dreamed that up one day. I mean, Ron had been working on drones, um, and she picked up on that, and so well, and he had been working on conservation, but he had not combined the two. And she said, well, why don't we combine the two and do this with students? We can have training. We can have training exercises in all this. And so, I mean, this is all, she's done a lot of that. I'm really impressed. She is a workaholic, and yeah, I mean, it's like this portal stuff is like, kind of an afterthought. And sometimes it gets, it seems to get shunted aside as I get recruited into, helping her and Ron on the conservation side. One little anecdote though is that Ron told me just once a while ago that they're kind of hoping that in the process of her working on drones, that she would remember how the circuitry on the pod is supposed to work. And I haven't really been, that just was left out there dangling one time. I don't know what the result has been of that.
Okay. With every interview, there's going to be one ugly question. So you have to tell us how you got into the doghouse with the princess.
It wasn't hard. I mean, it had to be really stupid. But, she wanted me, Ron hasn't made it so I can be the good cop. He can be the bad cop, and I can be the good cop. But when it came to getting her house repaired from the tree that fell on it, she wanted me to play the bad cop with the contractor. I was very unsuccessful at doing that. In fact, I didn't even try to be the bad cop, and I guess it was, so I got an E- for effort on that project, and she was, I very much underperformed on that, and I've been suspended from school.
But you're starting to talk now again, right?
Grace.
You're starting to talk again.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, Kashmir and Ron are both been putting in good word for me with the princess, but she's playing hard to get back.
There you go. And once it's back together, you'll have a meeting.
We'll have a meeting. Well, I mean,
A go-to meeting. A go-to meeting.
Oh, go-to meeting. Oh, yeah. I mean, I imagine we would do that. I mean, we can go back and forth, maybe. But anyway.
Sid wants to know, he's asked this 4 times, what does 32 vectors mean?
32. 32 vectors. Well,
yeah.
Those, as I understood them at first, they were simply, they're each department, each intelligence branch of different departments in the government have their particular vectors that they follow, and so forth. And they noticed that was January of 15. He reported they were noticing that the vectors were all lining up on September of 2016, and they didn't know, so they didn't know what was going to happen after that. and it was a peculiar alignment, and that there are only few of the, he said there's only a handful of us who are actually looking at the bigger picture. Each government department just looks at its pretty narrow picture. And then it's been in the last few months, he said, well, besides just studying the vectors, he personally has been involved with a manipulation of vector, and that was in connection with the Donald Trump politics. And I think he's might be a little bit embarrassed about that now with recent developments, but I don't know. Of course, I don't know. Yeah, I mean that's kind of hard to believe, but that's what one of the things he did on the other side was go manipulate a vector.
Okay. There's a question about the other side here. If they manifest as critters on the other side, are there humans there, ETs, ultra terrestrials?
I've heard nothing. All I've heard is how they personally manifest, the three of them. That's all I've heard, and I haven't really even bothered to ask. I don't. I mean, otherwise we hear of, my source really would be near-death experiences can read about. That's which usually involve other, humanoid entities on the other side. So this is, but that's not what but that's not what I hear from. I mean, that's all they told me.
Well, I hope that for your 26 years, you'll eventually get yours to go through the portal. I feel sorry for you that you are the only guy that seems to be excluded after all the work you've done.
Well, I don't feel. I mean, I'm not. I mean, that's the way to have the disclosure move forward. I would do it immediately. I think there are other ways of disclosing things, but if that's what I'm supposed to do, I'll do it without question.
Okay. Does Ron know everything, or is he on a need to know? I think you mentioned at some point that he was unfireable. They couldn't fire him. That he was sort of untouchable, or maybe you didn't say that. So maybe someone else said that.
What's Ron's position in all this? I mean, I think one of the last conversations I had with Aaliyah was, where did Ron come from? You came from the sky, for instance. Where did Ron come in? He said, well, he said, well, there's the frog thing, but it's more like a reptilian thing is what he, where he hangs out when he's not hanging out here.
And what about his father? Do you know the story about Ron's father? How Ron got an interest in this subject?
It was more his uncle, I think.
Oh, his uncle. Okay.
Uncle was evidently on the Glomar Challenger when it was attempting to pick up the Soviet submarine that exploded off of Hawaii, and that was where, I mean, his uncle handed out some manganese nodules at a family Christmas party, and Ron gave a couple to Ron. Ron took them and had them analyzed at the chemistry department at UCLA, and it was clear that the story of their origin, how, in other words, at what depth in the ocean were these nodules retrieved. And the uncle's story did not match what the chemical analysis. And he started talking about that around school. And he was visited by two men in black. And they said, yeah, you're a very, very smart young man, but please keep your mouth shut.
Have you ever been visited?
Visited?
Have you been visited?
No. I'm trying to think. Oh, well, I was, when I was arrested, when I was arrested at the Golden Gate Coast Guard Station in, when was that? 2015, that I was, I was mainly interrogated by three men in black, but they had no insignia. They had no insignia on their black uniforms. They were all armed. And so that was my men in black experience.
And so what were they asking? Didn't you hear this story?
Oh, well, they just, they, just want to, well, it turned out they knew of Ron. One of them had met Ron. I was able to ascertain that much. And they just intervened. Basically, they intervened apparently on my behalf with the Coast Guard and the local gendarmes. And they were they kept me separate from the rest of those three men, detained me a little bit away from what the other officials who were on the spot at that point. And that, but then they it was agreed that I would go to the San Marin, the trauma, the mental trauma, whatever they call it. And that was, and then that was the last I saw of them. So that whole process lasted only about an hour after I got back to the dock, being towed back by the tugboat.
Okay. Yeah. Based on your experience, do you believe in the world of ufology? You get a lot of people talking about the evil government and they're out to get you and they're going to kill anybody who gets the answer. What's your experience? Is there an evil government that's trying to cover this up, or is it people trying to do their job?
I've speculated that Jack Kennedy may have been assassinated, at least partly, because of he knew too much and he was talking too much, and that same for his brother Bobby. And I think, that was, well, if those assassinations had not happened, we might be in a very different place than we are today. Who knows?
One of the questions has gone back to the 32 portals. You've got everybody going on the 32 vectors. Can Dan expand on the 32 vector concept? What does he refer to? Who's involved? And what is the significance in the relation to what Ron was saying about the portal?
Well, it just in time, it turned out that the alleged unusual predicted alignment of these vectors was last September was when Ron wanted us to go through the portal. That's a connection. As far as individual vectors, I don't. They're just socio-political type indicators, measurements of indicate, he once mentioned abortion as being one of the vectors that is studied. Abortion statistics from around the world. That's the only one I was able to get out of him.
Okay. Has Ron indicated a timeline for more disclosure and what form that will take?
Oh, well, right. I mean, the last I heard from him on that was something about, August. And I can't quote you what he said about August, but that month has come up. And again, though, I'm working against, I'm working for disclosure without disclosure, which is basically what we're doing here. Everything I'm saying to you is totally deniable. And that's, I think that would be better than having the president have to, get up and make an announcement. I saw, what was that? It's about 90% die off. That's not from me. That's from Ron. And that's not what he, I mean, Ron and Princess have, mentioned that they've been expecting some sort of just a dieback. And maybe humanity's so has so many problems that maybe it's just better to, I don't know what people would die from, but just general, chaos. But I'm put in the position of defending humanities in that case.
You've got them going here. The questions are pouring in. Did Ron send an emissary to assess Joe Firmage's progress on his portal building efforts? What is the assessment?
Well, as I understand it, he's been in pretty close contact with Joe for quite a while. And in this latest thing that he's spoken as if there was progress was being made, but he hasn't told me anything more than that. I mean, I met at Ron's way back when in the early 90s. I met with Joe Firmage, had lunch, we had lunch or dinner in California, in San Jose or something, many years ago. And Joe, Joe just didn't take me at all seriously. He's much more on the nuts and bolts side, but and I guess he is a hardware. I would say Joe Firmage seems like a hardware guy, but I don't know specifically where Joe is now on the hardware software side of this.
I guess we should sort of point out for people who don't know Firmage is he was a .com guy, lots of money, very interested in UFOs in the 1990s, sort of dropped off the scene, and now sort of his name is now resurfacing, correct?
Correct, yeah. I don't know his source of money. He allegedly has getting cooperation from the Mormon Church, or at least some aspect of it.
And one of the rumors was that the portal was built to go to Mormon heaven or something, I heard.
Okay. Well, they do have trapdoors. Some of their temples do have trapdoors in the roofs, but that's more so Jesus can come down when at the second coming. Jesus can arrive through the trapdoor in the roof.
The question is from die off from what? Ron, I don't think indicated, did he?
No, he did not. No, just Yeah, just general chaos and disruption and everything. What a breakdown? What do they call it? A breakdown of governments.
Okay.
Failed states. Failed states. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned August, and I think I told you by email. We were in Toronto and we saw Stephen Greer speak, and he talked about you and Ron being afraid to try to get the message out that you'd get killed. But one of the things he mentioned there was August, an event would take place in August that would be 100 times the size of his latest documentary, Unacknowledged. Have you heard anything about August, some big event in August?
Only what I no, I mean only except I think Ron has mentioned August a couple times, but no specifics. It's just like, that was something to aim for. But the trip to Central America would be about then, would be before then, but then there's a trip to Kashmir, which would be after then. So who knows?
Okay. Does anybody want to ask a question? They can just unmute themselves and ask a question. I'm just looking through these other written questions here. Do you believe this is part of a divine plan? Do you believe there's...
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, this is the best possible world. I mean, this is.
Okay,
this
maybe
has
explain
been-
what best possible world is in 2 minutes. If you can do that in 2 minutes.
Well, I don't
That's
know.
your main theory, is the best possible world hypothesis.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, what would we be the second best world? I mean, that doesn't make sense to be the second. I mean, I'm saying we're the only world, and a lot of effort, as we're the co-creators of this only world, along with the source, the monad, and it's a work of art. We are, this has been a work of art, and I mean, that's if anybody come up with a better beginning and middle and end to our story, I welcome them to do that.
There's a question here about the newsletter that's put out, the Chronicles Little Princess. Can you talk about that? That
It
Lena's
just comes
putting
out every month.
Is that still coming out every month?
Yeah, but it's kind of late. I mean, it's been delayed, but it tries to be. And Ron is the one who writes it, mostly about Princess and her adventures and things she does with with the foundation.
Are you still there? Oh, Dan has broken up here.
I think it's available online. It's where it is, but
Yeah, it's in the chat box for people who want to get it. You scroll up. There's an email. If you send it to the email, they will send you this newsletter every month, and it's fairly long. It's many pages. Right?
Yeah, a lot of pictures. A lot of pictures included. And there are coded. I've been told there are supposed to be coded messages in it. I've never been able to figure out the code. I'm sorry.
They love codes. Somebody wants to go back to your incident at the White House again last month to explain your conversation with the Secret Service. What happened? Most people won't know this.
Well, I went to do a house call to pay a visit, and one day, and as I was driving down a car, Ron called me up and said, "Oh, are you going to be visiting the princess today?" I said, "Well, no, I think I'm headed downtown." And he said, "Well, I'll let them know that you're coming." and there was some question whether he was encouraging me to go downtown, and he did not. But he did not discourage me either. He said, "Oh, Dan, that's a terrible idea." And, and so I took the metro. I parked the car, took the metro on in, whatever they call it, and I walked the last couple blocks over there, just up to the front gate, and a guy stopped me and said, "Do you have an appointment here?" And I said, "No, I don't have an appointment." He said, "Well, what are you doing? It looks like you're want to go someplace." I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm thinking about maybe getting arrested." And he sort of wasn't so sure about that. And they don't. I mean, if you want to go to the White House, get arrested, they're not really going to accommodate you. But what they'll do is they'll assist you to go to the DC General Hospital, psych ward, which is what they did. And there was this incident. I'd like to see the video feed of where I felt something brush up against my back, and I saw a blur motion out of the corner of my eye. And one of the agents, like there are 12 of them standing in the circle, said, one of them said, "Excuse me, sir, but you'll have to move on. We have a situation here."
Wow.
And that was, I don't know, a curious, I thought, incident, because I never saw another person actually. And and then they put me in a car, put me in the SUV, and we sat in the parking lot over at DC General for almost 2 hours, and they were just kind of back and forth, and finally it was the psychologist. We were very busy that day, and they I got in, was taken in, and the psychologist asked me, "What's your social security number?" He had my file. He sort of had my file in front of me. He said, "What's your social security number?" And I said, "That." He said, "What's your date of birth?" I said, "That." He said, "You better get out of here. Just like, get out of here. We don't want you. We don't need to talk to you." So they were supposed to have kept me, according to the plan I heard later, was I was going to be kept for 48 hours observation, but they just had one of the assistants just walk me to the nearest subway station. And that was the end of that.
I'll make this the last question, unless somebody wants to do an audio question where they want to just unmute their mic and ask a question. But you spent most of your life on this, or half your life. Is there a main point or message that you wish to give to people?
Well, I think this is the best possible world, and I think it will be pleasantly surprised. I don't think we can even imagine how things will turn out in the end, but it's kind of like all's well that ends well, and I think things are going to end well. I mean, we're either a cancer upon the planet, or we're some sort of chrysalis ready to hatch out, and it's been a difficult pregnancy that we've experienced, but I think we are going to hatch out and become whatever butterfly potential is, that's what we're going to become.
What does your wife think about all this? We, in the UFO community, we all know that usually the significant half isn't really interested. Our kids aren't interested. Nobody's interested. What does your wife think about your long career with this kind of
Well,
stuff?
I gave you a short answer that she would very definitely fit your profile you just described.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was actually the princess calling me on FaceTime.
Okay, well, we'll let you take the call. I appreciate, Dan, all the work you've done, the information you provided. Are you still there? The princess is calling. Is there anybody who wants to ask an audio question? Okay.
Sorry, Grant. That was not the princess. That was Kashmir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Uh, Very interesting. Even the videos that the princess has the videos on her YouTube channel, Aliha Pandolfi. You'll see a lot, and you'll even see Kashmir talking about stuff. And pretty sharp 7-year-old little girl.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I appreciate all the work you've done, Dan, and the blogging and the putting the stuff out. I've followed it as closely as I can, and it's helped me an awful lot figure out what I want to figure out. And I'll leave it at that unless somebody has a question, an audio question where they want to ask something. And
Yeah.
no,
Well,
and we will. What you'll do is, if you do have another meeting, go to me.
Remember the coast. That was, my memory does not serve me that well. What we did, I think it was more scattershot.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could do this because what I want to do is sort of spell out your sort of story, because everybody's heard this little story or that little story, but to sort of string them all together to realize that it's a long story that's gone over many years, and it's not just one little story that you're telling.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It does hang together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And you're blogging at Open Minds Forum.
Open Minds Forum. Yeah. That's where I
That's
hang
what.
out.
Yeah. People can just Google search Open Minds Forum and Dan Smith, and you post basically every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anything that's new comes up, you generally put it up there. And
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully people will go to your blog site, and you'll get more attention than the few people who have followed Open Minds over the years. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so I'm sure we'll be talking sooner
beautiful.
than later.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your time and all you've done.
Thank you too.
Okay.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye. Night.
Yeah. Hello, Giorgio. Can you hear me? Oops, that's the dog talking. Giorgio, can you hear me?